The term intersectionality was coined by civil rights advocates and critical race theory scholar Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989 to describe, quote, an analytical framework for understanding how a person's social and political identities combine to create different modes of discrimination and privilege. It's become a buzzword over the past 30 years as we as a society have come to understand that the more marginalized groups that one finds themselves identifying as a part of, the more marginalized that they are often made to feel, leaving them feeling profoundly erased from the beloved community that they are supposed to be a part of. Today, as we continue to observe Black History Month during the month of February, I'm inviting you to meet a man who spent much of his life, much of his subsequent history, as a proud Black gay man who has resided in the margins and all been but erased from history. But yet, it was in the margins and from behind the scenes that he had a profound impact on social justice and the fight for civil rights throughout the 20th century. He is the gentleman whose picture is on the front of our program this morning, and pleased to introduce you to Mr. Bayard Rustin. Some of you may have heard his name before and know his story. For those who do not, allow me to share his story with you, why I have devoted this sermon to him today. Bayard Rustin was born in 1912 in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and was raised by his maternal grandparents, Julia Davis and Jennifer Rustin, who ran a successful catering business, and raised Bayard as one of their 12 children in a large house. Julia Davis Rustin was from a prominent Quaker family, but attended her husband's African Methodist Episcopal Church, and was an early member of the local chapter of the NAACP. Growing up, Bayard became all too familiar with NAACP leaders like W. Du Bois and James Weldon Johnson as frequent visitors and guests within their house, and it was not long before his grandmother was bringing young Bayard along with her on campaigns to protest racially discriminatory laws. His grandmother's Quaker faith and progressive outlook had a profound effect on Bayard and his development into the social justice leader he become. One story goes that Bayard, who knew as a young teenager that he was gay, expressed to his grandmother that he preferred to spend time with males rather than females. Her response was a very matter of fact, I suppose that's what you need to do. Rustin enrolled in the historically Black Wilberforce College in Ohio in 1932. He quickly joined a number of organizations, including Omega Psi Phi Honor Fraternity, and became well known as an accomplished tenor vocalist with many of the school's musical ensembles and African parts. He also remained ever true to his social justice convictions and was expelled from Wilberforce in 1936 after he attempted to encourage other students to participate in strike. He finished his studies at another historically Black college, Cheney University of Pennsylvania, where he took an activist training course offered by the American Friends and Service Committee. After graduating, he moved to Harlem in 1937. Rustin initially began his public activism by joining the Young Communist League, but became disillusioned and left the party after they stopped supporting civil rights. He then began attending Socialist Party meetings, where he met labor unionist and civil rights leader A. Philip Randolph and A.J. Must, leader of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, one of the first interfaith organizations in the United States. Rustin was quickly hired as the Race Relations Secretary for the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and was an instrumental part with Must and Randolph of the 1941 March on Washington movement that resulted in the Fair Employment Act signed by FDR that prohibited racial and/or ethnic discrimination in the nation's defense industry and the first federal action to promote equal opportunity and prohibit employment discrimination in the United States. It was the first piece of legislation to explicitly state that discrimination based on race, creed, color, or national origin was prohibited. This would be the first, but certainly not the last social justice victory in Rustin's long career. Immediately after the March on Washington movement, Rustin moved to California in an attempt to try and protect the property of 120,000 Japanese Americans imprisoned in internment camps during World War II, many of whom were right here in California. Although his attempts were unsuccessful, he was promoted as the Secretary for Student and General Affairs by the Fellowship of Reconciliation in 1942. That same year, while on board a bus from Louisville to Nashville, Rustin refused to give up his seat in the second row of a bus to a white passenger. He was promptly arrested and beaten by police when he arrived in Nashville. Rustin explained in a later interview that his decision to not give up his seat was inspired by a young white child that he had seen aboard the bus. Quote, "If I go and sit quietly at the back of the bus now, that child who was so ignorant of race relations will have seen so many blacks go to the back and sit down quietly that it's going to end up saying, they like it back there. I've never seen anyone protest against it. I owe it to that child, not only to my own dignity, that it should be educated to know that blacks do not want to sit in the back, and therefore I should get arrested, letting all these white people know that I did not accept that." Rustin also mentioned that his experience with that child also formed his views on being open about his sexuality at a time when he faced even more discrimination for doing so. It occurred to me shortly after that it was an absolute necessity to declare my homosexuality, because if I didn't, I was part of the prejudice. I was aiding and abetting the prejudice that was part of the effort to destroy it. That same year, Rustin helped in assisting others to form the Congress of Racial Equality, whose mission statement sought to bring about equality for all people regardless of race, creed, sex, age, disability, sexual orientation, religion, or ethnic background. It was heavily inspired by Gandhi's idea of nonviolent resistance, and Rustin traveled to India in 1948 to learn directly from the leaders of the nonviolent resistance movements. Before leaving for India, he organized the first Journey of Reconciliation, in which mixed groups of Black and white citizens drove interstate buses into segregated southern states to force the Supreme Court's recent ruling that desegregated interstate bus travel. The program later became known as the Freedom Rides and continued well into the 1960s. Rustin was introduced to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1956 when he was recommended to King, who was in the process of organizing the Montgomery bus boycott, as a consultant on non-violent resistance tactics. The two became close friends, and Rustin worked closely with King to establish the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in 1957. It was at this point that Rustin's sexual orientation, for which he was open about throughout his entire life, began to come into conflict with his social advocacy in the fight for civil rights. Rustin had previously been arrested in 1953 while in Pasadena and had pled guilty to homosexual activity, which was illegal in California at the time, and for which he was not pardoned for until 2020 by Governor Newsom. Many African American leaders felt that his presence in the organization as a gay man would undermine support for the civil rights movement and urged King to distance himself from Rustin. King refused to do so, but the pressure forced Rustin to leave the SCLC in 1960. Rustin still remained active in the civil rights movement and was a key figure in organizing the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, where Dr. King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Rustin was the one who scheduled him to speak. A week before the march, South Carolina Senator Strom Thurmond, the polar opposite of a prophetic person throughout history, attempted to discredit the event by pointing out Rustin's involvement and calling him a, quote, communist, draft dodger, and a homosexual. For the record, he was a socialist, conscientious objector, and homosexual. And went so far as to have his California arrest record entered into the record and to have him investigated by FBI. Many leaders, such as NAACP President Roy Wilkins, did not want Rustin getting credit for the March in Washington because of his liabilities. Yet he was still immortalized on the cover of Life magazine on September 6, 1963, with his longtime friend Philip Randolph as the leaders of the march. Rustin remained active after the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act with his support for various causes, including the development of labor unions and anti-communist foreign policy. He also began to speak out publicly in the 1980s in support of gay rights. Although he died of a perforated appendix at the age of 75 in 1987, he would have been pleased to see the March on Washington that occurred 2 months later. That was the turning point in the establishment of LGBTQIA+ rights organizations to this day, many of which were born from the same grassroots social organizing that he championed his entire life. In 2013, Rustin was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama, who eulogized Rustin as an unyielding activist for civil rights, dignity, and equality for all, and fought tirelessly for marginalized communities at home and abroad. As an openly gay African American, Mr. Rustin stood at the intersection of several of the fights for equal rights. There are also plans to immortalize Rustin later this year with a Netflix movie that honors his life and legacy and the impact that he had in the fight for civil rights and the rights of all marginalized people. This past Wednesday was Ash Wednesday, which begins the start of the Lenten season for those in the Christian tradition. For many people, it is a time of introspection and reflection, and an opportunity to recommit themselves to the values that they hold as important. A few years ago, the UUA released a hashtag UULent calendar that invites us to reflect daily upon the word and carry our awareness of that word throughout the day and to embody and enact it in our lives. For today, February 26th, the word is justice. And it is my own personal reflection upon that theme that inspired me to dive into Bayard Rustin's story and history that brought about the sermon that is before you today. My hope in sharing Mr. Rustin's story is that in the same way that he was tirelessly committed to social justice and to the living embodiment of our sixth principle of the goal of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, that his example can serve as a reflection for us during a time when we are united to think more deeply on things and values that are important to us. And whether we're lifted up front and center, or whether there is every attempt by society to hide or silence us, may we never stop being guided by what we believe and what is important. And may it never diminish or stop us from the work that we know that we are called to do. May it never continue to be so. Blessed be. Amen. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. Thank you all so much.